This is reposted.
Larry Olson. Today's idea comes to us from the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. It feels really fancy in here right now. Sir Winston Churchill said, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." I feel like you have some things that you can still give to me. What do you think about this?
Did you see the 1980s-ish movie War Games, one of Matthew Broderick's earlier offerings?
I saw it, but I can't remember it. Remind me.
It's basically about a scientist who programs a computer to play games with ultimately determining if nuclear war is a good game to be played. So the computer plays like tic-tac-toe, then it plays hangman. It ultimately determines that nuclear war is not a game you could play. It's not a game you could win unless you don't play.
Oh.
All that to say is, if you go to work to win every day, nobody wins. Nobody. Like, if you go into work and be like, I am going to destroy everyone, coworkers, bosses, clients, nobody wins at the game. If you go to work thinking, you know what, I got to do some stuff right, but I also want to get along and care for those around me, people can win.
Yeah, that's like the Stephen Covey, win-win or win-lose. You go for a win-win, right?
Win-win. But I don't know. I just feel like sometimes, like, maybe, once again, I didn't go to a big fancy Wharton School of Business or anything, but I feel like they teach people to win there, right? You got to win at all costs. You got to win, 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 win.
Right. Have you ever seen the movie All the Money in the World about J. Paul Getty?
I have not.
It's well known that he was so wealthy, but like hoarded it all to himself. He didn't give any to his kids, and he kind of died sad. It gets pretty sad in that movie, but this quote made me think of him, but because it's like, yeah, you got everything, but then you isolate your stuff. You kind of rise up, and then there's no one else left around you.
You know, when the original guy was sitting around the Serengeti, and he like looked across, he's like, hey, there's some people over there. Mankind got moving when those people over there merged with the people over here. Like, we're meant to work with each other. Right. And then when you don't, you're going against the flow of how society's supposed to be.
Yeah. So I guess, what do you think about this? I think this is a pretty obvious thing looking at this from 1,000 feet away. But like, when do you know when to stand up for yourself and not be a sucker and only give stuff away? Or do you just have to learn that over time?
You know, once again, though, if it determines on how you think about this, right? Like, if your idea is to be president of the company, right, you're probably going to cut people out of the loop way more than you are going to include them in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that all the time, right? The people that got the knives out usually rise up to the top fast. And guess what? Then they're at the top. But did they lose a part of their soul going to the top?
Okay. So maybe to you, this is like on the tail end of your life. You won and you were successful, but like, what do you really have to show for? What's your legacy?
Yeah, exactly. What did it take for you to get there? You probably have better stories than me, but I once was a producer for a television station called me and said, hey, we want you to audition to be the airborne reporter for this station job. The audition set for Monday, but I was kind of nervous. It like kind of came out of the blue. So I called my friend and said, like, hey, station Cron 4 wants me to interview this thing. He goes, cool, yeah, I think you should do this. He literally hung up the phone, called the producer because he knew him, auditioned before me, and got the job. Literally just stabbed me right in the back. Wow. And to this day, everybody kind of knows him in the business. It's like, that's how he operates. It's like, dude, he wants to win at all costs, and he'll stab you in the eye to do it. And at the end of his life, maybe he might go, you just got to do it to succeed.
Wow. I've never heard that story. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like that also, I see the opposite example of that within entertainment. You work on a commercial or a movie, or you work on projects. And if you're someone people like to work with, you're like, hey, do you want to do the next one with me? And if you don't, like, you can tell who you don't see popping up often because they're not a good person to work with because they're only thinking about themselves. Like, just because you're trying to get ahead isn't the only thing about what you're getting. Like, maybe I want to sleep in a little bit. I'm late to work every day. That's something that you get, and it's a selfish mentality. So I guess I'm saying don't be selfish.
You know, it's funny too, and you know this way better than me, but like in improv, which I've always thought, like there's highly talented people in improv, actors, comedians, but the whole thing about improv is that you always build on what the other person's doing on stage. You never cut somebody off. Like it's a very collaborative effort with improv, which I think is sort of antithetical to like the whole Hollywood thing.
Yeah, it is. There's a story about the movie Dumb and Dumber. Jim Carrey was obviously going to be the lead. And then Jeff Daniels, they brought in and they hired him on like a temporary basis. Like he didn't even know if he had the job, and they shot for a week in Aspen and he didn't know. And the reason they didn't, he's like more of a serious actor. They brought him in because they needed someone that could complement Jim Carrey. Because if the force of Jim Carrey would have been there, there wouldn't have been anything because he's a force to be reckoned with. So he's kind of always getting, and Jeff Daniels always gave to him, and that's what made the movie work.
And that was honestly, that's what makes society work, right? A business work. When you have complementary parts that work with each other to make the whole better.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of statistics. I kind of Googled this today. Companies that foster collaboration have way higher profits, statistics of outgrowth, all sorts of things because they work together.
And pre-pandemic, that's why all the tech companies have open office seating, is because you could just make a comment to someone next to you as opposed to everyone being in perimeter offices. It's harder to connect with people.
I feel like if someone were listening today, if you don't want to work with people, maybe you should become a statistician, a zoologist, maybe a tax preparer. Those would be good jobs for you.
Okay. I like that. Well, I like what you're giving to me, Larry. I think it's nice. If you guys have a post you'd like us to further explore, please reach out. You can find us at Reposted Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I'm Andrew Keller for Knuckle Sandwich, saying thanks for stopping by.